So, welcome to Bodhicitta Dakini Monastery. This is a teaching on what is love. So many songs and movies seem to be orientated around romantic love and finding your soulmate, or just asking that question, what is love? It's kind of up there with who am I and why am I here and how to be happy. And the problem is, of course, everybody wants love and nobody wants to give love. Or we think it's something we'll get without giving. We're all looking to receive and not always thinking about how to give or how to create love rather than it's like ideally it should be like a garden. You create the circumstances, you plant the seeds, and then the flowers grow, but the flowers need nurturing, right? So a lot of us just kind of waiting for someone to come and plant a garden without actually doing the work. The Greeks had 6 kinds of love, which I find really nice because there are different kinds of love, aren't there? So one of them is eros, which is sexual passion or desire. We seem to be very fond of that, and we sometimes mistake that for, that can turn into love and friendship, and ideally should go along with a romantic relationship, but it definitely wanes with time. But the ancient Greeks viewed it as, irrational and dangerous, and that it could be destructive, and it definitely can be destructive if it's like an affair or. And I think they say the brain in love is like someone kind of on opioids, and if you were to be like that for a prolonged period of time, you'd actually die. So, but it is definitely life-changing, isn't it, to have that, to fall in love and have that profound life-changing event. But what it turns into has to be sustained with a lot more than eros. So when I say love, I don't just mean romantic love. I'm talking about love in a broader sense in all its forms. Another form, which is one of my favorites, is agape, which is love for everyone, selfless love or charity, universal love, loving kindness, which is empathy for all beings and our capacity to share. And ideally, any kind of love should contain an element of that. Another kind of love is philia, or deep friendship, camaraderie, loyalty, and, sharing one's feelings, one's challenges in one's life, So actually, friendship is really important, and is sometimes its importance is underestimated in our society. We think our partner should be able to give us everything, which is, probably why we have such high divorce rates. This unrealistic idea that one person can give us everything. So the next kind of love is ludus, I think that's how you say it, which is playful love. So it could be the kind of love that little kids have for each other, where they're just very playful, like or puppies, or the playfulness of people who are just starting out dating. Could be flirtatious, but it's like lighthearted. It could be just making a joke with the barista who serves you coffee. The next kind of love is pragma, which is long-standing love, mature, realistic love, usually between, family members or a couple, that's more, they've done some research that says long-term relationships have more of this kind of bonding chemical, and I can't remember the name of it. But when you care for someone for a long time, it's a kind of nice, apparently people who have children have this chemical in their brain as well. I wish I could remember the name of it. But it's like a commitment and a security and a comfortableness, with the person you're with. And it's also like you're able to make compromises to help the relationship work. But obviously, you don't want to have one partner bending over backwards and the other one giving nothing. So another kind of love is, oh my goodness, I even tried to remember how to pronounce it. Uh, Philatia, I think that's how you say, which is self-love. Um, so with self-love, there's an unhealthy self-obsessed narcissism, which obviously we don't want to have. But there's a healthy kind of love that enhances your capacity to love others. And that is, a realistic idea of your abilities and your flaws, and a capacity to work on yourself, but also appreciate your own natural goodness. And so that's actually important. So for most of us, love is conditional, and that's okay as long as you're not enlightened. Like, you don't want to be abusing yourself or anyone else, or overextending yourself. But it's good to just extend the borders of your heart just a little and a little and a little. And if you go into the kind of spiritual love Buddhism talks about, which is boundless compassion, or Bodhicitta, the wish to liberate all beings from suffering and become a Buddha, just that, nothing big. Then you're gradually expanding the qualities and strength of your compassion, so that you can become very resilient in the face of tremendous suffering. Probably, I imagine nurses and emergency workers and doctors, or mothers with many children, develop this kind of strength that they can carry the suffering of what they see. But I'm sure they also get compassion fatigue as well, in a caring profession. So that is where equanimity is important. So equanimity is an impartiality of mind, that one can see the bigger picture, like you can remember that the person you're serving isn't always suffering, hasn't always been old and fragile or grumpy or miserable or whatever, that they have this whole other life, and that they're capable of good things, but you're just seeing them in a moment in time, and they won't always be this way, and the nature of human existence isn't just misery and sickness. Remembering the bigger picture and nourishing seeds of peace in yourself, so that you have the capacity. It's like you're in a wreckage and everybody's drowning, and you're just like sitting in a dinghy trying to pull some people out of the water, and you're like, oh, but to remember that this shipwreck isn't human existence, and that not everybody is like this, and to have this kind of immovable peace in yourself, so that whatever feelings, exhaustion or whatever arises, you have the space to just kind of allow it to come up, and then keep moving like a storm front. It's there, and then it moves on. And so you're able to kind of allow these things to come and go, and kind of start the day afresh again, but there's no doubt over time it could be, especially if you see traumatic things, you need to note if it's having an effect on you. And also to be secure in our self-love and self-worth, and to have good boundaries, to love in such a way that you allow the other person to do whatever they can do for themselves, that their love isn't suffocating you or pushing you down. It's like the put on your own mask before you're putting another person's mask on. Like, so you're sitting there in a dinghy, and you can't help anyone if you're allowing someone to dunk you under. It's like you can only cope with whatever capacity you have, and when you're tired, rest, and when you need a change or a break, do so. That, like, our society so values hustle culture, like just soldier on, put your feelings aside, and that's not always the best thing. That kind of leads to sickness and depression and even suicide in some cases, you know. So it's really important for people in caring professions and human beings in general to take time out, you know, and not, it's so sad that we live in such a way that we probably have more than we need, and we're very financially overextended, and we don't have affordable housing. We're not living simply. So it's very hard, you know, even living simply is expensive these days. So, you know, it's really hard, even though probably human beings aren't meant to go as fast as we do, that we do go so fast. You know, our modern society is exhausting. So yeah, and you know, equanimity can be like where you just come back to the source, you come back to resting in peace, and kind of you're sprinkling your life with the flavor of the ultimate, so that you're not like completely engrossed in this, whoever you're with, you know, in their suffering. You're kind of, you're not coming at them from a point of view of just dismissing their suffering, and you're doing whatever you can relatively to help them, but you can't fix everything. You can do whatever your profession is, you know, with dignity and with kindness, you know, but you can't carry the burden of you know, another person's misery. You know, no one person can carry the weight of another human being unless they're a parent, you know. But even parents need a break, and it shouldn't be forever. You know, no one can carry the load of another person's happiness and well-being. And you know, we all come to this world with our own karma, but we can still do what we can. Ideally, you want to, it's like that, teach them to fish for themselves kind of thing. And also recognizing, you know, everybody's on their own journey, you know, and everybody's different. So what you think might be best for them is maybe not always what they want for themselves. And that also you can't always, you can give someone the tools to help themselves, but if they don't take it, that's not your fault, you know. So this is equanimity. This is kind of loving, but not drowning with someone, not loving in a codependent way, but offering compassion in a way that is spacious. It's helping with a spacious mind without too much expectation, because human beings are going to disappoint you, and they're impermanent, you know, and there are things that happen, a lot of things that we can't control. And you know, so we do the best we can. That's it. We light a lamp in a dark place, and the rest may not be in our hands, you know. Yeah, so ideally we want to, you know, approach loving in all its forms, helping, serving with equanimity, with a spacious heart. And that's why like a daily meditation practice can just make you so much more lighthearted in how you approach life and help others and deal with social work and social injustice. I read an article recently, it was called Loving the World as It Is, you know, because we all, I don't know about others, but I want to change the world, and I want it to be on my terms. And, you know, I have certain values that I think it should be, and it just is so much bigger than me and so much more than one person can change, you know. So you have to find the good things and appreciate the good things and be grateful for the good things and be the change you want to see. But you also have to realize that other people have their own journeys. You know, the universe is just so much bigger than you. And also we all have different conditioning about how we were raised, you know, and what kind of attachment patterns we have in how we approach others. Like some of us have anxious attachment patterns where we're like always trying to please people, and we're never feeling completely secure that they love us or that we've done enough, and we're apologizing and people pleasing. And then there are some of us who have been really hurt and have have been let down and had our faith in humanity damaged. So we become radically self-sufficient, and we pretend we don't really need people, and we find others' emotional need a bit overwhelming. So it's like, I need some space from you. So that's like avoidant attachment, and then there are those of us who had chaotic attachment, who we're like love bombing someone, and then it's like, oh, I've been distracted and it's too much, so I pull away, so the kind of chaotic attachment of someone who is in and out, is there all up in your face and then gone and then comes again, and they're all over the place. And secure attachment, healthy attachment is that kind of, like Khalil Gibran said, do not make a weight. It's like, let the winds of heaven blow between you. Make not a bond of love, but rather, two whole worlds, two whole beings sharing their lives, like two wholes, infinity. So, no one can make you happy. You have to find, you still need your own life and your own career and your own interests. But ideally, they intersect enough with another person so that you can share your lives, enough shared values and love and mutual warm regard for that to become a successful relationship. And then there's the kind of love, which is a spiritual love, which we call Bodhicitta, or boundless compassion. And one of the ways we develop that is in the 7-point cause and effect contemplation of all beings as your mother. So first of all, you think of your mother's kindness, like if you think about how she didn't sleep properly for about a decade, and how it could be your mother, it could be your grandmother, it could be someone who's like a mother should be, maybe a grandparent or an aunt. And you just think of all the lunches they made for you, all the nappies they cleaned, all the times they burped you when you were crying and helpless, and you wouldn't have survived without the care of someone like that. And how toddlers walk around picking up knives and sticking their fingers in electricity points and, oh, it's a flame, So someone kept you alive. And even if a parent did nothing else but carried you in their womb for 9 months and gave you this beautiful body with which you can see the sunrise and climb the mountains and have your own children or fall in love or travel, like, this body is a gift. So even that, and go through the pain of childbirth, to bring you into the world, and probably worked in jobs they hated to support you, and listen to your bitching when you're a teenager, like, I mean, if a job description of motherhood or fatherhood came up, like, drive people around, listen to their bitching, have them, cook and clean for hours, and have them reject all your emotional labors and your meals, and say it's not good enough and that you ruin them for life. And, no one would sign up for that job, or for no money. No one would sign up for that job. So that endless selfless giving, it's almost due to us that they grew old, because they never gave themselves a moment. They could have done so much with their life, but they were raising us, so they never gave themselves a moment to think, what do I want for myself? What kind of, what could they have done, because they just were always thinking of us and our well-being and worried for us. So there's a need to repay that kindness. And you could send them on a cruise, you can give them foot rubs and buy them chocolates, but it's a very small thing in comparison to a lifetime of service and a human birth. And if you think about it from a bigger level, at least from a Buddhist point of view, like, they're trapped in the wheel of birth and death, and they're going to get old and sick, and they're unenlightened. So the best way to repay the kindness is to become an awakened being and to find true peace, and to be able to give them that, because an awakened being knows exactly what they need. Like, if you look at the Buddha, he had a very different way of teaching. Say, for example, an illiterate peasant woman, he would say, as you throw the bucket in the well, just be fully mindful of letting it out and dragging it up. And whatever you do in daily life, come to your breath. And to a scholarly person, he would give a very different, more elaborate. He would teach according to the needs of people, and an awakened being knows exactly what others need, how to touch their heart, which most of us don't have that capacity as unenlightened beings. So then the next stage of the 7-point cause and effect for developing boundless compassion is a great love, which is the wish that others be happy, and then wishing them to be happy without any expectation of return. The next stage, which is boundless compassion, arises, the wish that they be free of suffering. And then the 6th point is the special intention, which is recognizing they need liberation. They need to be free of the wheel of birth and death. They need to be liberated from ego and negative emotions. And then the final stages, which is I need to become a Buddha to do this, an awakened person. And not just the mother of this life. Everybody's been our best friend, our lover, our parent. They say the tears that even this one mother has cried for us over many lifetimes, because people are born again and again together because they have a karmic bond, would fill the oceans of the world. And the bones of the bodies they've shed in our service would be bigger than Mount Everest. So that's the way Buddhists view others. That's the boundless love, which is a very high standard. But it does make a difference, when you start to think of people in the street, past life mother, and you think, oh, they're being really annoying right now, but they were probably my mother. So it kind of gives you a different view of them, And when I worked in a nursing home, I used to just think of who they used to be. Like we had some photos of them when they were younger, and even though they could be a dementia patient who was just saying the same sentence all day long, driving you mad, whose nappy you had to clean, and it was like so exhausting. But you just remembered, this is Beryl. This is a person who has kids and has a whole life, and who used to love, line dancing or swing dancing or the taste of cherry pie, or they had a whole life. They're a mother and someone's daughter and someone's child. And when you think of them that way, as a whole human being with a whole life who has Buddha nature, it's a very different, it's easier to care for them because you see the bigger picture. You see that serving them is serving the universe, right? Serving the divine. This is a spiritual path. This is a divine path. This is the universe incarnate that I'm serving. And it was easier to, it was very moving to serve them in that way when I thought of them like that, instead of just this annoying old lady who likes to wipe her poo on the wall and can't remember her name and asks the same question every hour or every 5 minutes in some cases. Yeah, it was really sweet. And one day there was a lady, she had a moment of lucidity, and she said, "When am I going home?" And it was just really hard to explain to her, like, well, you've been in this nursing home 5 years and you've got dementia and you can't remember anything, and, your family don't visit much anymore, like, I was like, how much should we explain to her, because she just became sad, or like your husband's passed away, and like all these things have happened and then she'd just go back into, I don't know where I am, and she'd say that every 2 minutes. So, but there is this kind of poignant beauty in allowing ourselves to be touched by the suffering of life, as long as we don't allow it to drown us. Like our practice has to contain everything, not just joy, not just the good things, But in the beginning, our practice might be like a little life raft for our exhaustion, and that's okay too. that we just try to shut things away, and because the world is too much, too big. So we just come inside and we get a little bubble of peace, you know, and that's okay too, because our lives are like a shipwreck, you know, especially if you work in a caring profession. But eventually our practice broadens out, you know, to embrace not just peace or calm, but our, you know, our trauma starts to come up, our unresolved issues, our, you know, when you just see yourself talking to yourself and how you talk to yourself and what you think, and you're just like, oh my God, you're a nutcase. But you have compassion for yourself too, you know, and you can laugh at yourself. And you have, you know, less judgment of others, more patience with others, because you know your own insanity, you know. So this is the 7-point cause and effect of developing bodhicitta, the wish to liberate all beings and become an awakened person. And then just on a more general note, you know, what does healthy love look like? So obviously the things to avoid are being controlling or toxic or resentful or blaming, constantly blaming, breaking a person's trust, whether it's a child or a friend or a partner, or, you know, infidelity or betrayal. So trust is the foundation in any friendship or relationship. Can you rely on this person? You know, are they representing themselves honestly? Are you representing yourself honestly and your needs, and what you really want? You know, can you rely on this person? And then, you know, patience, because we all have moods, we all have ebbs and flows, we all come home exhausted. And I think there comes a point in a relationship where you just can't keep a mask up anymore. You know, you just get real. Like, this is me with no makeup. This is me, you know, in my tracky dacks at night, you know, kind of, the mask come down, you know, and that's when the real love begins. Empathy, you know, to see the other person's perspective, because no one person's experience is a summary of the truth. You know, the truth has many 6 degrees of separation, and I could be looking at a 6 and you can be looking at a 9, and they're both true. You know, so we have different ways of seeing things. Generally, I find men and women have, cisgender men and women can have quite different ways of seeing things, and different cultures can have different ways of seeing things. I know, like, different people of different cultures really like to run monasteries differently, and they would view certain things as like an atrocious way to run a monastery. You know, like, I remember I was in some Asian monastery and they were like, no rice, serving a meal without rice, you know. And then there was like, because in a lot of Asian countries, they don't have sweet things for breakfast, they have savory things, you know. And the Westerners were like, how can you have a breakfast with no coffee and no sweet things and no carbohydrates, no bread, you know, like, what's this rice soup pickle thing you're giving us, you know? Just it can wear on you. But patience and empathy are very important, as well as affection and interest in each other, you know, showing interest, taking time to deeply listen to what the other person is saying and what they're not saying. And affection, you know, showing your appreciation, and, you know, appropriate physical touch, and, you know, so forth, depending on what the relationship is. Flexibility, you know, adjusting to changes in one's partner, and one partner should not do all the bending, all the giving up. Both have to make compromises and share, you know, the emotional labor and the house labor and the financial labor. Appreciation and respecting each other's, like, one of you might be religious, one not. To not ridicule the other person's interests or faith or choices. You know, and really, like, when the other person's listening, not just waiting for your chance to speak. That happens in some friendships, you know. And people these days seem to have the idea that if they lose one friend, they can always find another, you know. But actually, deep friendship and real kindred friendship is not easy to find, you know. Yeah, so to not debase the person, invalidate them, or belittle them, protecting each other's privacy, and doing emotional labor. Yeah. So reciprocity as well in just doing little things for each other. You know, otherwise the woman starts to feel like the husband's a child, and maybe, you know, I'm sure there are some men who can feel quite burdened by, if they've got a partner that stays at home, or, you know, whoever's the breadwinner can feel quite burdened by, you know, the other's choices of, you know, or supporting a whole family. So healthy conflict resolution. Sometimes if nobody's ever talking about conflict in the relationship, it's probably doomed. But also if people are stonewalling or escalating, you know, or really freaking out every time there's a difference of opinion, that can also be very problematic. You know, or personal attacks, you know, holding grudges. So it's important to talk conflict through with respect and empathy and understanding, you know. And this is not just in romantic relationships, this is with parents and children, you know. Like some parents are like, I say it, therefore you must do it. This is not a discussion, you know. It's not going to work very well with a teenager. They're going to develop some very deep resentment and probably get out as soon as they can, you know, if you have that kind of dictatorial approach, or they're going to be doing things behind your back. You know, a relationship has to be mutually beneficial, and both people have to get their needs met and be able to be themselves, you know. And sometimes people say, why did they cheat? Why did it break down? And sometimes it's not about you. It's just sometimes in order to be themselves, someone has to break away because they've grown, they've changed. You know, people don't always stay in love, or, you know, have things in common anymore. Like, especially this happens with couples that retire and the kids move out, and you're like, who are you? Who is the stranger I'm sharing my life with? You know, what do we have in common anymore? We're both completely different people now. And, you know, our children shouldn't have to live out our unfulfilled dreams, you know, nor do they owe us to be there, you know, our carers or our emotional blanket or whatever, our reason for living. You know, they have their own journey. They have to find out who they are, and they're not the same as us, you know. Yes. So talking it through with respect and empathy, and respecting each other's individuality and boundaries, as long as the boundaries are not irrational, you know, they're reasonable. So openness and honesty. Honesty must must underlie all the disclosures we make. You know, partners who mask their true selves and hide emotional realities, or actually actively deceive their partners about their habits and behaviors, are breaking a fundamental trust. And every relationship needs this fundamental trust, even if it's just, you know, kind of a simple, I mean, okay, there are relationships that are just like, you're just giving me this and I'm just giving you that, and that's cool. We don't need more than that. But most deeper relationships require honesty and, you know, allowing the other person to be themselves, and that you are who you say you are, and, you know, you're not going to hurt me, kind of thing. Then you're not going to betray me, and so forth. I mean, there is this thing of sometimes it doesn't get talked about enough. The responsibility of clergy, you know, the responsibility of a teacher or a yoga teacher, or a healthcare professional, or a teacher, anyone in a public role. In their public role, people offer them intimacy, they volunteer personal information, they trust you, they might give you more authority than they would if you were just a person on the street in jeans. They think that you know about whatever field they're approaching you about. So you have a responsibility to not abuse that trust and to not manipulate that person and to not use your role to, defraud them or, steal their partner or their resources, and, mind screw them or kind of brainwash them or make them fearful. It's amazing actually how many normal people can end up in a cult because maybe they felt a bit lost in their life and they just didn't have a strong sense of community, and somebody who was a narcissist completely manipulated their personal history and their vulnerabilities and just made them completely dependent. Very normal people this can happen. So this kind of spiritual abuse is very important to avoid, and to know there is a responsibility that a person in power has to not break trust and to keep ethical conduct, and to not that's why a spiritual teacher shouldn't be sleeping with their students. And if they do end up falling in love, they need to declare it to the community and not continue that teacher-student relationship, because there's a certain kind of glamour and power that comes along with a role as a teacher, or this kind of role, whatever role of authority you have in the community, so that needs to be acknowledged and discussed, about the ethical requirements of teachers, yoga teachers, people in power, to not take advantage of vulnerable people. So do you have any comments or questions about this? What does love mean to you?
Well, I like the Greek different types of love, because you don't really break it down like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they were very relevant.
Yeah.
And they are different. They're all different.
Yeah.
And the focus is different.
Yes, that's true. There are many different kinds of love.
Yeah.
Philia is not one I've heard of before, like that friendship. I mean, obviously we all know it exists, but we didn't have a name for it,
That's a good one.
The love of friends.
Yeah.
And
you do need friends.
Yeah, you do. And these days we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket, like we shouldn't make our partner responsible for everything, or one friend,
But true friends don't come along every day. And you can't have too many, because to be able to do it correctly and put the effort in.
Yeah.
That's
true.
You spread yourself too thin.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. They say the amount of people that you can have I'm not talking about a deep friend, but like an acquaintance for a community, for a healthy community, to keep a bond is about 100 people, a village of 100. But yeah, deep friendship, that's really rare. So hold them close. Yeah.
One hand.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think this, even if we don't necessarily like someone or have a lot in common with them, I mean, I'm a bit of a unicorn, like I have a very specific niche of what I do and what I'm interested in. I'm pretty much of a black sheep, but at least we can have goodwill to each other. We can have mutual respect and goodwill. Like that goes a long way in smoothing the friction of life, to be a good citizen and to view humanity as your larger family, and if I'm committed to the sacred, I must respect the life of all sentient beings, not just human beings, but animals, and, do as little harm as possible and do as much good as possible is so important, I think. Especially if we're someone who's supposedly spiritual, like a lot of terrible things have been done in the name of spirituality, which is why, ethics is important, but not just ethics, integrity. Um, you know, I try and fail sometimes, but I try to have integrity, to have your actions match your ideals. That's, you know,